Hello, and welcome to another week of the Storied Arcs podcast. I am your co-host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Alex.
And today we are coming at you with the conclusion of The Good Asian Volume 2, issues 5 through 10.
Yes, 5 through 10.
And I've just got to say, right off the bat, I'm super excited for next week's episode because we already recorded it.
Yeah.
It is our exclusive interview with Pornsak, Pichetshote, the author of this book. So just lots of great stuff coming there. I think it will probably curve our speculation that we normally do at the end of a series, like, is it coming back? And what did the author mean by this? So we have a little more insight than usual as we come to the end of this book. We've now spoken to the artist and the author. So I guess my wife was like, so that's everyone. I was like, well, hold your horses. We gotta... We'll track down the colorist and the letterer, and then the president of Image Comics.
Yeah, though that I mean, the writer and artist, they are the
names on the book.
Well, but also in terms of creator credit, like, who's responsible for the story and the storytelling. That's the lines and the script, and then the lettering, the coloring. Those are in support, and not to diminish their contributions, because obviously, especially in a book like this, color is so important. And one thing I think we can tease from what Pornsak said is he really made it go out of his way when he talked about his work as an editor about trying to get everyone working together on the same page, no pun intended, but the idea of like, hey, the artist has done this. So as a colorist, like, maybe don't do that because it's going to take away all that hard work. And if the artist and the colorist have done a certain thing, and well, maybe not put the text box there or the shape word bubble that way, so it covers this up here. So he has full respect for all aspects, and we do too. When we talk about the credited creators, the guys who say this is their idea, it's writer and artist. But no, it was very, very cool. We won't sound as off base this week. It definitely negates some of the things that we talked about last week with regards to speculation about what could come in the future.
Well, look, let me just say,
maybe not negate.
Not negate, certainly. And sweet validation, I was on the money with a West Wing comparison.
Yeah.
Although he also mentioned, and again, I'm not going to spoil the whole interview, but he mentioned a heavy influence of The Wire. And I was like, oh, duh. Yeah. This is much more of a Wire world. Well, it just has like the West Wing style civics lesson built into it. Yeah.
You have the structure, you have the framing of the West Wing style episode, as you mentioned there. It's educational without being like teachy or preachy. It's wrapped in a more, I don't know, flavorful package. But you're right. The world is far more dark and gritty and noir based, more like what you see in The Wire, that type of story. But no, that's very cool. So we can pre-thank Pornsak for his time, for giving us that interview. It was really, really awesome. So look forward to that coming next week.
Yeah. And we can now spoil who the killer is, because basically there's no mystery anymore. You've read the book by now.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that got me with this volume, and I alluded to this off air, but I think it's worth bringing up. We find out who the killer is, I think, in issue 6 or 7. And
somewhere in there. Yeah.
7 probably. And you still have 8, 9, 10. You still have 3 issues after the killer's revealed, which means this is not just a murder mystery.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it was a.
I mean, he wraps the whole case file, but it was a missing person, right?
It was a missing person. Yeah, and the murders were part of that. They got folded into, and obviously, the way Volume 1 ended with Frankie's death,
it created an escalation to it.
It definitely did. But yeah, that was part of the story, and we see how tangled that got with Ivy and her half brother and all this stuff there. But yeah, it is. The book's telling you what's important is that this was an after effect of the plan that had been set in motion. That was the real inciting incident for the story itself. So yeah, it wasn't a murder mystery, but it was part of it. And again, definitely with the way you leave Volume 1, You know, if you were trade waiting this and you got that first one, and then you had to wait, I mean, 6-ish. I mean, you probably had to wait like 8 months. I don't have the publication dates for the trades in front of me, but if you were trade waiting as it was coming out, you know, you end on Frankie getting murdered and the reveal of this character we hadn't seen before, and then oh my god, so that's going to dominate your anticipation for what's coming in volume 2,
because now it feels like a murder mystery.
Exactly.
Where it's like,
yeah. But you have to recalibrate yourself that it's not what the story actually is. It's not what it's about. It wasn't the inciting incident. A murder was not what brought Edison back to San Francisco. You know, it was something else. But you see how all these different kind of tendrils reach out and interconnect, and you see how it's much part of a much larger story. But you know, still there is a mystery there, because not only is it a killer, but we're shown his face at the end of volume 1, and it's like, wait, who's that? Like, who's this guy? Like, you know, he's got blonde hair, but like he's got like the Two-Face thing going on. He's got like the little fan of the opera action there, and you're like, wait, well, what's this? Who's this guy? Boom, end of trade, end of story arc. Got to wait for the next one. So they said that dominates your mind, and you're fixated on that, and it's almost like you have. And in a way, I think
but there was a shock to the reveal that I mean, like the ethnicity of the reveal, among other things. But and then, you know, as you get into this trade, you realize how much of a family drama this story arc really is, which makes it a perfect origin story for the Edison Hart character. You know, you understand, like, he's got, you know, complexities with his adopted brother, his adopted sister, his adopted father, you know, his biological parents. It's this whole tangled web, and they're all more involved in each other's lives than it even seemed like from being adopted family.
Yeah, and even more so than any of them, like, individually even knew. You know, everyone. Right.
No one had the whole picture.
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone had some part of the secret. But if you stand back and you look at the whole picture, the whole family tree of how everyone's connected, you can see it all there. But nobody knows the whole thing. You know, and what I was going to right there was the reader's focus when you jump back in here is now you're focused on Hui Long, the Hatchet Man, who's this guy, Frankie's death, and you do kind of forget about that. All right, we're supposed to be looking for Ivy, like what's missing persons thing. And I think you see Edison in a similar spot, because obviously we come back and he's pretty broken, pretty shaken, because he just watched like the one person who was ever really good to him, you know, forever, whatever Frankie's faults may have been as a person, like he actually did try to treat him nicely, you know?
Yes.
And he just watched him get murdered in front of him. So his focus is also diverted. So he now is more invested in finding Frankie's killer than he is about solving where's Lily Chen. And of course, we know now that those stories are the same story, that following that case is the same case. But even our main character, his focus is diverted. He no longer is in it for helping out his adopted father, finding his lost lover / maid. He doesn't care about that now. He's focused on getting justice, or justice, scare quotes, for Frankie. So, you know, his motivation mirrors where the audience is in their mindset when you jump back into volume 2.
Yeah. And I think the great thing about volume 2, now sometimes this move will annoy me, and in this case it did not. We just saw his brother get shot. He got the axe. He got axed to the throat. Or axe, yeah. He's dead. Frankie. And this one opens with a time jump back to the two of them as kids.
Yeah.
But we didn't get that before.
Yeah.
You know, clearly the whole story was built on it, which means Pornsak knew it.
Yeah.
Like this was the weight of this explains the dynamic they had in volume 1.
It was an implied relationship just based on how they interacted as adults. And I think you're supposed to contrast that with the flashback of Edison's childhood we did see, which was the initial interactions with Victoria. where they're chilly now in as adults, and we see how she rejects him as a child early on. So I think we're supposed to imply or infer that things didn't go well with Victoria, but they went a lot better with Frankie. Frankie was trying to be a friend. Frankie was trying to be there for him, but we didn't see that. We don't get that until this flashback after he's been killed.
Right. And now we understand how that'll weigh on Edison. Yes. By the way, page 5, we get our youngest version of the detective vision.
Yes.
Red boxes. And it's unclear to me if that's him using it for the first time or if that's his mom, like showing him, trying to point out, here's what you look for.
I read it as both, because obviously the narration that's going on there is his mother speaking, right above that says, you pay attention when they're nervous, when they're relieved, all the different ways they think the world owes them happiness, which is that.
That's a great line. Yeah.
That line hits, they'll tell you everything about how they want to be treated. You just have to pay attention. And then right below that, you're right, is the detective focus there. So yeah, I think I read that as, that's his first lesson. So his mom is telling him this, and so he's looking at the specifics outside of what's just happening. He's looking at the hands, the face, the body language, all of that. So yeah, I read that as that was the first time he's listening to his mother, and the first time he is paying attention.
Yeah. Then we have that huge romance between he and Victoria.
Yes. Yeah. And which adds flavor to their interaction when they were at the Jade Castle back in the first arc, where it appears, as you just said, that she rejects him as like not part of the family as an adult because she did that as a child. But then obviously we see that there is far more tangled and it's far more layered than that. And in a lot of ways, it's actually a lot worse than that,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, I was mistaken. I think maybe in my Goodreads review, and I think we corrected it last episode, but I said that I had an audible gasp at the end of Trade 1. It's actually at the end of chapter 5 or issue 5.
Issue 5, okay.
Yeah, when he's loading the body into the trunk, full page, and who walks out to see the worst possible position to be in.
Yeah.
Now, if this were really The Wire, he'd be throwing 2 bodies in the trunk on the next page.
Yes. Yeah.
But he's no Marlo Stanfield or Avon Barksdale.
No. He is still trying to be.
He's more of a McNulty. Yeah.
He's far closer.
He's the flawed detective.
Yeah. He's not quite Bunk. He's not natural police, but he is. He's pretty good. He is McNulty. He's got a lot of faults, but McNulty's good at his job, just that no one likes him.
Aside from the last season, yeah.
Well, he was too good at his job there. The 5th season of The Wire, McNulty is actively being bad at his job. Like, he doesn't screw up.
But that's true, yeah.
Yeah, he's making a choice to appear bad at his job or to work outside it. He's not being incompetent. McNulty's never that. So, he screws up
in prep for next week's podcast, you don't have to read anything.
Yeah.
But go watch 5 seasons of The Wire, 7 seasons of The West Wing. You'll be ready to roll.
You'll understand all the references.
Yeah, hit that early 2000s HBO hard.
Yeah. And NBC. NBC was West Wing.
Oh, that's right. It's on HBO now. That's what's confusing.
Yes, yeah. If you got Max, go watch it. Yeah, you'll be all set for the references. But no, it is interesting. So are you when you talked about coming back to this volume, after the big shocking death, and not being plunged immediately back into the story, but instead we're getting all this flashback now. Is that something that you? I don't want to say critical of, but it is something that you put a critical eye to.
Yes,
and try to judge how well it's done.
Because in general, it annoys me. Mm-hmm. I think the example that I've used a bunch of times, and I use it because everyone knows he's my favorite author, is that whole 5th trade of Sweet Tooth, where you're at the final scene at the end of 4, and it jumps back for this like unrelated historical, not completely unrelated, but it jumps back for this big historical plot, and it really felt like, man, you're really kind of gilding the lily here, dragging the series out. which, now knowing everything Jeff was working on at that time, there's no way he was trying to augment that series for the sake of it.
Yeah.
Because he was trying to write, Green Arrow at DC, and Matt Kent was pinch hitting on Sweet Tooth.
Yeah.
And so there's, and Pornsak worked on Sweet Tooth, right? Editor.
Yeah, he was editor on that. Yeah, he was.
Can't believe that. Yeah. Didn't bring that up.
There. Yeah. But no,
that would have been a whole other episode.
Yeah, would have been.
But anyway, and it's also something that would annoy me in television.
Sure.
Get
to the big climax, and then side story kind of thing, right?
Yes, right, right. And I think probably the guiltiest party there is Lost.
Lost did that a lot. Yeah,
Lost would do that a lot, especially in like the lesser seasons.
Yeah,
and it was like, we have one plot that people really care about, so we have to use it very sparingly.
Yeah,
and really stretch it out.
They didn't know where they were going exactly. Yeah, when you're writing it as you go,
that's what it communicates to me most often when
you're stalling, right?
Right. Or they know they shot their best. That was their best shot. It was like, we have an A plot and 4 C plots, so we're gonna have to like really bog you down in C plots, before we let you get back to the A plot. Otherwise, this will be over too soon.
Yeah,
and nothing about this book felt that way. Because 1, it's only 10 issues.
Yeah.
2, this is how he's opening the second trade.
Yeah.
And 3, by the end of this issue, you get right back to where you wanted to be.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing dragging it along. And the stuff he's giving us isn't C plot.
Yeah,
it's
all
backstory is A plot. It's A plot.
It's all critical. Yeah, and it only becomes more so as you move through the trade. So it's definitely not stalling for time. He's not like, I need a filler issue here just because, we need a break. We got to take a breath here. He didn't do that with the middle issue in the run, which,
And I don't hear you complain about this kind of stuff as often. I think you just kind of weather the storm.
Yeah. It is.
I want everything to be tight and efficient in storytelling, and it's just so rare.
I think part of that comes from having read so many ongoing stories that you're like, random filler episode, whatever. Yeah, random filler issue. And you take it in stride because you're like, okay, fine. Someone needed a break. Deadlines got weird, whatever. You take it, you go with it. It tends to be a little more annoying when something is a limited series. And when it's a limited series. And now I'm not going to, and I'm going to bring this up as an example, not as a bad example, because I very much liked it. But think about when we went back and talked about the Flintstones. The first issue coming in the second trade, because those really aren't story arcs, but it is collected 1 through 6, 7 through 12.
Right.
Issue 7 is the one issue that was drawn by a guest artist, and that was the Great Gazoo kind of narration when he's like talking about observing bedrock and all that. Not much story going on there, not much social commentary like some of the other issues were, but it's clear or something like that hey man, Steve, you needed a break. You just you get a month off, get him a little breather. We have this interstitial issue. It doesn't feel out of place, but even in a limited run, sometimes you still need a break there. This issue didn't feel like that at all. At least not to me, because I think, as you mentioned, all this backstory, all this history, all this family history, seeing Edison interact with literally everyone in his family, everyone important to him, his mother, his mother, his father, his biological parents, and his adoptive family.
Right. And I think
all that gets built up into him.
The type of writer that would bother me would be if we took all of those things and stretched them out over 4 issues.
Yeah.
It was like, here's one where the A plots, like, they're showing it every once in a while to give the illusion of moving forward there. But really, this is just about the backstory between him and his brother. Yeah. And then the next one is like more treading water for the A plot, backstory between him and his sister. And you get a whole trade out of that.
What I was going to say is where I was going with, similar to what you're saying there, was that you would take all these elements and each each issue would open with a different flashback segment.
Right.
And then when we jump to the present day in that issue, it's, we got that flashback because it directly relates to the story we're telling in this issue. This first one is the one with his mom. And then the present day action is him reflecting on and using the lessons from his mom. And then the next issue is him and Mason when he's a young kid or something like that. And then the present day action reflects exactly that, and that becomes your convention. That becomes your framing mechanism, where every issue, boom, we're going to start with 3 or 4 pages of a flashback from Edison's life. And then we're going to see how that directly influences our current timeline as it moves forward. And it's just so convenient that as we move along, each one of these reflects back on a memory from his childhood. And I think that kind of construction can wear, like, you got to be really good with that. You got to be really, really good.
Well,
that's a high bar to clear and not feel hokey.
Exactly. And to me, it always feels like you're doing the setup for payoff in the same issue, and that doesn't work for me.
Yeah. And you're doing it over and over and over again. Yeah.
Right. And you don't have to play extreme long ball, but I love it when you do. Like
10 issues. And in this case,
no. But I mean, I'm talking about like what I really admire is the long ball in a series like The Unwritten. Like you meet Madame Roush in like volume 2, volume 3, and volume 3.
She's
not really significant until Apocalypse volume 2 of Unwritten Apocalypse, and then you realize, like, oh my gosh, this is one of the most significant characters in the entire series.
Yeah,
who has been making appearances, and now on rereads, like that long ball was in place. And everything I know about Mike Carey would suggest to me that he knew that twist all along.
You would think,
and was just
he had
playing with it.
Yeah, he knew when to drop those in there, drop those hints in. Yeah.
Right. Which is all, to me, like there's no one way to write a story, but I appreciate the craft of that so much more than just winging it and discovering on the way.
Yeah, I think you and I are generally in line with that. But yeah, it all comes down to there's a personal preference there, because some things, there are plenty of great stories and great avenues you can go down when you are open to letting things happen. When it's not so structured and you got to hit every beat, because that doesn't always work. Because sometimes you do that, and if you're not clever enough as a writer or creator, the reader can just see the skeleton, be like, oh, you did this here in the beginning, so you can come back to it 50 pages later, but I could see it the whole time. You didn't disguise it.
Or if something happens in the world,
you can see behind the curtain. Yeah.
Yeah, that like would make what you're saying seem kind of tone deaf.
Yeah.
Both in a politically offensive way or in a like really naive way. Mm-hmm. And if you're like, but I committed to this, so I have to follow through with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's nice, especially, a 10-issue series, that's at least a year of work, and a lot can happen in a year.
Yeah.
So anyway,
you have to be flexible enough to pivot there, but you want to show that you have, I say you don't want to show that. If you are so inclined to set your story up that way, you do, I think, want to reward your audience, right? If you are someone who has planned it, and I think specifically with a book like this, and something that we, again, don't want to spoil the interview with Pornsak next week, but I asked him about that, because this is outside of the larger thematic elements about race and wealth and all this and immigration and whatnot. At its core, the mystery, it's a detective story, and it's got a ton of twists, and they all come out in this volume. And I asked him about, how do you approach a story like this? Do you start at the end and work your way backward and figure out what the beats are, or do you start with the inciting incident of the missing girl, the maid that runs away, and see how the twists and turns unfold? And I think his answer is really interesting, and it's a combination of what we're talking about here, where you have these ideas of, I know A, B, and C have to happen, but how do you get from A to B? Yeah, maybe that's a little squishy. Maybe things can happen in between there, so that idea of looking at your story holistically, and again, especially when you're talking about a mystery book, because I got to think, knowing how it ends is important in writing a mystery book, right? A mystery story. You have to know what the reveal is.
One would think, but I bet there's somebody out there doing it well. And
yeah, just starts with an idea and goes.
Yeah. Or we start with the character. I mean,
oh yeah, it's true. Yeah.
I like clearly Sir Arthur Conan Doyle knew exactly what the mechanic and the twist was.
Yeah.
And wrote, and I love those books, but they do a thing that I would be bothered by with any other author, which is Sherlock Holmes makes a leap that you as the reader could not have made.
Yeah, and that is always
there's always information withheld.
Well, and it's not just Sir Conan Doyle. You think about the Agatha Christie books, Hercule Poirot is the same way. When you have the big parlor reveal, and you as the reader, I think you want to be able to read along
and say, I was tracking with that. Yeah.
Or you can, when the character says it, you're like, oh, right, that, and that. Now I see it. Even if you didn't piece it together, when the pieces are laid in front of you, you can see it.
Rather than the Deus Ex Machina.
And so often of him doing
here's a piece
thing.
of information you didn't have.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, and that's the critical piece.
Yeah. And it's
and
hard.
I have to say, I think I've mentioned this before, but in the Robert Galbraith books, which are mystery series, that always happens. It's like they're like these tomes, and there's all this information, and you're in the character's head the whole book, and then it's like, and then he figured something out, and it cuts to like the next chapter, and you have to wait for his like Agatha Christie speech,
his reveal,
to get it, and it's like, well, what is this like? Like I have to be in his head for all of the like boring romance crap and tension that those books sustain. And then as soon as something interesting happens in his head, you kick me out.
You have to wait. Yeah.
So that to me is unfair, and that's inconsistent storytelling. But that again, this is all in contrast with the good storytelling here.
Yeah. I hope you agree with this. I mean, whether or not we find we can cover this, what the actual reveal is, I think the way that it is revealed, which is kind of like a series of small twists and reveals that Edison revealed that he finds out on you, and you basically start peeling back these layers, and as they lay them out, and really the one big piece, as they the visual language they use in the first volume was the jigsaw puzzle, which is very on the nose, And
and they do it again here without a jigsaw with the pipes.
The plumbing, Okay.
With the idea of so that's page 35. If you're following with us, it's not numbered. Like all the pages we want to call attention to, they happen to be. I promise we didn't go through and figure out all the non-numbered pages and then be like, let's talk about those. But it's page 35, and that's the one I had pulled up to talk about next. So I'm glad. I'm glad you just jumped there. Because it's showing like the machinery of his head, but in a 1936 way.
It's like the wheels are turning there, but it's also representative of like, it's all one system, but they're all these different parts flowing to different areas, and so it's like him, again, not use the phrase putting the pieces together, but you can see how he's starting to see everything is linked, right? And so the one big piece is who was Hugh Long? Who was this guy? And that's the one reveal that when you get it, it's like, oh, okay, this guy has a connection to our missing person. And once we see what that is, and once that reveal is given, then everything, all the dominoes start to fall and everything starts to mesh together there. So that's the kind of thing where, maybe like in an Agatha Christie kind of thing or Conan Doyle, where that information isn't revealed. And that would have been Edison Hark at the end being like, and that's because he's her half brother.
Yes.
Big gasp. And you're like, wait, what? Wait, how did that happen? But here we're getting that story parceled to us. So we're reading along and we're discovering that along with Edison. So as he's putting the pieces together, we're getting them. So they aren't twists so much as that. I guess they are reveals, right? As he just learns more and more about the case, we, the reader, are learning along with him, so that there isn't some grand finale, unmasking at the end. By the time we get to the end, we kind of know what all the pieces are. And I think that goes back to what you said at the top about we find out who Frankie's killer is halfway through this volume, because that's not what the story's about. It's about Edison following the clues, and that's a clue he found. It's a revelation he found, And so that's just when it comes in his investigation, right? And there's
Right.
still more to come because he doesn't know. He still needs to figure out who, what, and why, and all of that. He knows the who, but doesn't know exactly who this guy is. But he needs to know more about that. The investigation is still going further, and there are still more reveals to get to. So it just so happens that the thing that was motivating him at the time, the very personal motivation of gotta find Frankie's killer, that just comes halfway through the set of reveals.
Yeah, I think the simplest way to say it is you find out, you see the killer's face, you find out who the killer is, you have the confrontation with the killer in the warehouse, and he can't go back to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Like immediately because the job isn't done.
Yeah.
The job isn't done until he's got this, very old school file folder of here's all the clues, here's all the evidence.
Yeah. Until all the pieces fit, because now he has more questions than he had when he started, when he first got there, about looking into this one missing girl. There's so many more layers to it. And I think he is starting to realize that. Of course, in between there, he gets the lie thrown in his face, and we get another wonderful hard-boiled detective noir trope. The guy having to get a new face, whether that's something like, the first thing I thought of, which I know is comes in the late end of this kind of genre, but it's the Donald Westlake books. Richard Stark, Donald Westlake, the Parker series.
I don't know.
Parker is a character that's been made into movies a boatload of times under the one condition that the character can never be named Parker.
Interesting.
Yeah. But his books have been adapted for years, and it wasn't until Donald Westlake passed that they actually made a movie called Parker, and that was the Jason Statham one. But this character goes back and it's been adapted in many, many ways. The way that I know him was that Darwin Cook did a series of adaptations where he wrote and drew adaptations of this Parker series books. And one of the ones is the story called The Man with the Getaway Face. And it's all about our guy Parker who gets plastic surgery so he becomes someone else. And that's a trope going all the way back to a movie called Dark Passage. Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall.
Okay.
Which they there's a very in a way to make sure that Humphrey Bogart's in the movie the entire time. It starts with his face bandaged, so he's already gotten the plastic surgery, so there's no before picture.
Okay.
Of who his character is, and
Save
then it
money
comes
on
out
production that way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of casting two people there, but that's such a again, that's a trope of the same guy, but he looks different. So when he can interact with people who's seen before, who may or may not know him, and obviously we see that here with Edison. Like when he goes to try to talk to Victoria, and the first thing she does is just try to beat the crap out of him because you don't know who she is,
Right, but and I think actually the futuristic equivalent that I was thinking of as you're talking is Minority Report. Where he swaps out his eyeballs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyone who actually knows him personally will still recognize him because his face is the same, but he can move around off the grid.
Yeah.
Because
and that's
his eyes are different. Yeah.
I was thinking the classic Face Off, Nicolas Cage and John Travolta.
I was just about to congratulate you for not mentioning that.
Oh, I can't not. That movie is cinematic masterpiece.
Dumbest premise in the history of movies.
Masterpiece.
The dumbest movie ever, and I saw Ant-Man 3.
I saw it Face Off multiple times in theaters. It came out when I was in high school. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's definitely a high school guy kind of movie.
Yeah. I'm in that picture and I don't like it, but no, it's one of those tropes. They find a way to use it here, and they use it to effect. Later on in the trade, when we see some of the flashbacks to some of Edison's investigating, when we see him moving around with this new face, we see how he's able to kind of go unrecognized and things like that. He's able to talk to people because he's no longer on first blush, that Chinese detective that everyone thinks killed Frankie Carraway,
Right. No, and now he looks like the Invisible Man.
Yes. Yeah.
So another thing here that it's like a little bit of a trope, but really well done, is the villain saying, "We're the same, you and I."
Yeah. Yeah.
But you realize the trauma that the racism and migration problems have created has actually made them two sides of the same coin. I mean, they're both reacting.
They're closer. They're closer than Edison would ever admit, but they are further apart than Silas would want them to be.
Yes, but even Edison crawling away from the fire.
Yeah.
He says, I guess he was right about one thing.
Yeah.
We are the same.
Yeah.
And let me, so I don't know if you fell for this at all, but that's the end of 7. Then the whole place goes boom.
Yeah.
Then issue 8 opens with another character kind of continuing the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, snap. Did Edison actually die? Like, I mean, I didn't know if this was a limited series or continuing series.
Yeah.
And, kill or be killed. The story goes on after the main character is gone.
Yep.
And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool if he let someone have just enough information that now there's another detective like continuing the work, and what he was doing is bigger than him. I kind of bought it until I realized, like, oh wait, is issue 8, 9, 10? Are they really going to do three issues like that? Sure. If it was the final issue, I think I would have bit hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that got you at all.
No, well, you got to pay attention to the lettering. Is that those narration boxes are a slightly different color? They're a little darker.
In 8,
yeah. Whenever who was that? That's is it Lily Fan?
Yeah.
She's the girl that works at the call center, because she narrates when she first appears back in volume 1. Her text boxes are a little bit different color. The background is a little bit different. It's very minor. But yeah, obviously what they're trying to do here is whether or not the intention was to think that it was another detective coming in. The obvious takeaway is that we see the building explode, and then the next person speaking, the next thoughts we hear are not Edison's. So then there can be a reveal that, yep, still alive, and his face is all bandaged. So they are setting up a reveal in that way. Where you're maybe supposed to question, whether or not Edison is alive, and we don't get that until the final page of the issue, when we see him again all bandaged.
Yeah, I've got to wonder if it's a good idea to be wrapped in bandage with a cigarette hanging out of your mouth.
Listen, man, back in the day, it was safe to smoke anywhere. Planes, hospitals, wherever.
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
Yeah, I speaking of literally back in that day and smoking constantly, I saw Oppenheimer over the weekend, just so everyone knows when we're recording. Yeah. And I'm also reading the Oppenheimer book that it's based on.
Just
4 or 5 packs a day.
Yeah.
4 or 5 packs a day.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm awake enough to smoke 4 or 5 packs a day. But I did notice in the movie, he's never not holding a cigarette.
Yes, yeah.
No matter what's happening.
He's also never eating. So his whole thing is he's surviving on cigarettes and martinis. So, but no, just for the record, as when we're recording, I did Barbenheimer back to back on the same
on
day.
a work night.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Oh,
it was awesome. It was awesome.
I mean, it sounds
awesome.
great. But
it was great.
And did you do the Barbenheimer order? You did Barbie first? And then...
I did. I did Barbie first in the afternoon, had a little break, then Oppenheimer. I think that's a good way. Having seen them both, I think that's a good way to go. I don't think you want to take. I think you want to take the Barbie energy into Oppenheimer, and then have your soul crushed, as opposed to it's not that bad. As opposed to taking.
I didn't have my soul crushed, but I did drive home in silence, which because I think Oppenheimer. I saw it, in 70 millimeter, and it was immersive and it was loud, and it's constantly moving and it's constant noise and it's constant information, tons of characters, and I think I felt a little overstimulated. I had to chew on it.
Yeah, and if you were to take about a half hour to an hour and then sit down into Barbie, the way Barbie opens, I think your brain would melt, like involuntarily. I don't think it's possible to do that. So, if you're my recommendation is to go Barbie and Oppenheimer. But
there's been an uptick of brain melting in the U.S. this weekend.
Yeah. But Anyway, back to the story here. But yeah, no, I think there is, this is the one issue. I don't say I didn't like this one issue. This is the one issue where they're intentionally playing with audience expectation, right? You're like, you can't really, maybe again, the way you said, if it was closer towards the end, maybe you think he might be dead. But here we see the building blow up. He's not dead, but we're getting this whole issue narrated by another character, another character we've seen narrated at all, and it's just a matter of like a waiting game. Where's Edison? And it's almost like the reveal isn't that he's still alive. The reveal is that he's all bandaged up.
Right.
But by the time you get there, exactly. By the time you get there, it isn't like, oh, he's alive. How about that? It's always like, oh my, wait, why is he all bandaged up? And you're thinking, is it because of the lie? And of course, we find out then yes, partially, but it's because he's had full facial reconstruction. So I'm kind of glad they did it in that way, where you think the obvious reveal is just that he's alive, but the twist is nope, it's actually it's going to be the new face. And I think that doesn't then waste the issue for me. Because if the whole issue is just to reveal that he's alive and he's still working the case, but everyone thinks he's dead, like that is really played out trope. And I think that would have taken me out of the story, and it's been like, okay, that's just a really stale story choice. But to go and mix that with, again, the kind of the time-honored hard-boiled detective trope of the new face, and to mesh those two together and have that be the reveal, I think it works. And then, then it allows you to move into 9 and 10, as a kind of the final bits of the plan or the reveal kind of, show themselves, and as Edison kind of figures them out.
Yeah. Another great trope that I just felt like you can't really be done with this character after you do this. I think it's page 109 to 110. The dummy in the bed getting assassinated, and then him popping out behind the door. I'm like, that's so James Bond.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't take this character away from me now.
Even so, you said I have James Bond written too, because that scene continues when the assassin pulls out the sleeve gun. Like the hidden gun,
and he's like, how stupid was I?
Yeah. But that whole sequence there is, there's a lot of tropes there. But I think they're very effective. It's the way that Edison is colored, and the fact that it doesn't really make any sense that his eyes would be so bright and shiny, but that the little piece of skin that would be showing is just pitch black. So there's, but it evokes the right kind of tone and feel of what you would kind of expect from a story like that.
Yeah. So, that was great. And then I don't know if I've ever seen the paneling that's on, and the fonts are really small, 112, which is a 15 panel.
Yeah.
But
tall rectangular panels. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, this is Alexandre's cinematic style.
Yeah, this is the
like when the pace picks up, it feels like quick cuts, like Bourne style action.
Well, and I'm glad you have this here, because I have this one here. I have this page noted along with pages way back in the beginning of issue 6, right when O'Malley, we end issue 5 with, as you said, Edison has Frankie's dead body, put it in the trunk, and O'Malley's right there. And what immediately happens is they go into a fight, a big chaotic fight there. It's very physical. And we mentioned it in the last episode, and I think we see it a little more here, that when we have those one-on-one physical battles, the paneling goes all nuts. It's diagonal. Nothing is even. Some things are paneled, some not. It all is meant to, I think, invoke the chaos of a fight. And yet here, still one-on-one here, but it's a gun battle, right? It's about speed and quickness. It's how quick can Edison realize what he's missed, that the assassin has the sleeve gun there, and how fast can the assassin get that gun out and shot. And so these quick cuts, very long and narrow panels, it evokes that feeling of of unease and hurriedness. And that pacing is it's serving the same function as seeing those fight scenes when the panels are all tumbling everywhere to represent the bodies that are tumbling, like throwing into walls and over cars and stuff like that. You get the sense of what's on the page. It translates into how you're reading it. And here you can't help but go, and especially like at the very top there when it's one word per panel, So it's like it's in his own mind. It's gotten, maybe it feels like it's slow motion, but it's very staccato. He's
Right.
one word, one panel. His hand is down, his hand is up, and then the hand without the gun's going to come out. You see them all in sequence, it feels frantic. You feel the urgency.
And when you're in a fist fight, things aren't moving linear and upright. All of the diagonal cuts and things like that is almost putting you in the character's perspective of like,
you're tumbling.
Right. You just got punched in the face. Now everything's sideways for you, or, you're looking at this thing slanted.
Yep.
It's just a really brilliant way to put you in the character's point of view while continuing to tell the story. Another one on that, on that note is page 119, when he's finally removing the bandages and he's only got the one eye open. Yeah. And so he's seeing out of one eye into the mirror what his new face looks like. Yeah. As he pulls the wrap away. And they, he didn't make a meal out of it. It's not like a 3-page thing. It's just the middle panel of page 119, but it's so cool. And then you get the full size, splash of his new face.
Yeah. Yep.
Just very cool stuff in there that, again, I would love, I would love to review the script and see like,
what's there?
Did it just say like he's pulling off his bandages and it's totally up to Alex to figure out like, okay, well, what's a cool way to show this? Or was he like, it's going to be a slow reveal. We'll get one eye at a time.
I could imagine at this point it being like, here's how much text we have on the screen. So on the page. So Alex knows how long the scene needs to take to play out, right? Because he has to get through this much text has to be said. So we turn the page, which I'm sure that's in the script. Turn the page and we see the reflection of what Edison's new face is. So I would assume it was left to him just being like, drag this out, pace it, put it however you need to do it, just so we can get all this information in there. Because again, there's a lot of text there. So he utilized it very, very, I think, smartly in that top panel is just like a hatched panel. There's no graphics on it. So you're not covering anything up by putting the text bubbles there. And then by doing the one eye at a time and only seeing that opening, what are you left with? Left with a lot of block space, a lot of space where you can put text on the screen, on the page, So it feels at this point that Pornsak would have a sense of the rhythms that Alex is trying to do throughout the book. And I have to think here, I'd like to think too, that you just trust him to go with it and say, get from point A to point B. This is the reveal of the face. So we got to spend this page building up the reveal to the page turn of the final image. So whatever you got to do to make that happen. And I think, the choice he makes is so cool and it's so effective because it is so simple in the grand scheme of things.
Right. No, it's simple. Yeah. And again, the coloring in this book is so distinct.
Yeah.
The shading hue over panels and pages when they're flashbacks and they're based on the character. It's all just stuff that you can absorb without processing, and it's effective. And that's just like a masterstroke. And that's I want to get.
That's how you know it's working.
That's Lee Lawridge.
Lee Lawridge, yeah.
Lawridge, yeah.
That's how you know it's working. When it's just there on the page, and it's when you don't notice it. It's the same kind of thing with lettering as well. That when it's not sticking out, when you aren't, it only sticks out when it's
bogging you down.
Yeah. When it's drawing your attention, that's almost always in a negative way. So if the colors aren't working, you're going to get to a page and be like, oh, something's off about this. What is this? And like, oh, the colors, something's not. it's not working here. There's too much contrast. There's not enough contrast, or whatever it is. So when you're just immersed in the story and that stuff just kind of washes over you, that's how you know it's working. But obviously, we do want people to be recognized for their work. So we want to draw. We want to draw attention to it.
No, that's what we do.
Yeah. But when you're reading it, if you're just in the page, in the story as you're going through, and you let all that stuff just absorb into you, that's when it's humming at peak power.
Yeah, and that's we just hit the last page of page 9, and I just scrolled. I'm reading the second trade digitally on my computer, and the covers for 10 are so iconic.
Yeah.
One, the A cover ends up being the cover for the deluxe edition.
Yes,
which spoiler alert, Pornsak said that is how he prefers it to be published, how he prefers it to be read.
Yes, in one edition. Yeah,
and then the variant is from our guy Alex.
Yes, yeah,
he finally got one.
He got his own, on number 12. Yep.
So, and that's, I mean, I love that variant.
Yeah, well, and
it's not overthought, but you could chew on it a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's so great with the blood red backing there, and then
the empty trench coat.
The characters being on the inside there in the black. Yeah, going back to that main cover though, that Dave Johnson cover, which is it's such the movie poster, complete with the creases. You know, the creases that show it was folded. I mean, just it's so magnificent, and
the fingerprints on it. I mean, you
can tell. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Which I don't know if you ever did that I guess it was like middle school, high school. I would do that. Like, they always had big posters and swag up for the movie. And when I was at my local theater, I would ask them like, hey, can I have that when the movie leaves and you guys are done? They're like, yeah, put your number down here. So I had all, and they would all get folded like that. Yeah. My parents have probably thrown away that stuff because most of it was probably garbage. Yeah. I just thought it was cool. I discovered that you could do that one time and that they would just throw it away otherwise.
I did not know that. At the time, I knew someone who did do that though. To the point where what I didn't know was that they're double-sided. There's because they're meant to be lit from the back.
Right.
And the way I learned about this was and I'm sure my brother listening, he'll know this. A friend of his had a movie poster for I think it's Army of Darkness.
Ooh, that's a great one.
But it was backwards on his wall. And you asked him, like, Dave, why is it backwards? He's like, well, it's because it came from a theater and they're two-sided. And so I was like, well, if it comes two-sided, I'm going to put it backwards because that's the kind of guy he was. But that's how I learned that A, you could get these things, and B, that they were two-sided. But no, I was never a big movie poster guy. But I mean, something like this though, with this old school callback to those noir films, this one is just, it's picture perfect. And said, of course, this is why it's the cover for both volume 2 and for the collected edition, because Dave Johnson saved the best one for the last. This was by far the best one. Everything about it's perfect.
There are a couple here. Well, I think this is the variant for number 2, kind of the dime store novel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm also holding this one here. Which is number 10.
Which is yeah.
And I was like, man, we've done interviews with both of these artists. I wonder if I could just like mail them a couple, random covers that I like and have them sign them. And I was like, I would eat it so hard in postage to mail these to France and back, and then California and back.
Yeah.
I'm like, it'd probably be cheaper if they were doing like a CGC signing to mail it to Florida once, pay a fee, and have them sign it. So I was like,
waiting for them to come to a con. Although I don't know if Alex would be coming to a con in the States here. I don't think
he'd like to do more, but I think he'd probably stay on the coasts.
Yeah, well, he'd go to the big ones like New York, maybe Chicago, or go all the way to San Diego. I don't think I've seen Pornsak at a show before. I'm positive I haven't, because if it had been in the last couple of years, I would have taken this or anything like that. But yeah, he's someone that if I ever see him at a show, I'm definitely taking issues of the Good Asian. Some of those a lot of those variant covers. Some of those artists like Jen Bartel, Andy Wu, Sana Takeda, people like those.
Well, now
I've
if
seen.
he comes, now if he comes, I'm bringing like my trade for the Unwritten, and I'm bringing Day Tripper, and I'm bringing. It's like knowing what a member he was of the creative team for so many books that I love.
Yeah.
He was like secretly one of my favorite creators all along. Like he just
contributor. I'd say contributor. I'd say contributor. I don't want to take anything away from this. Yeah. Right. And I think he would say contributor as well. I think he has
he's on the team.
Yes.
Of like before his name was ever on the front cover of something.
Yeah.
I was already tracking with him. It was like you get me, you get what I'm into, which is great stories, great storytelling.
Yeah. Well, and so much of that is that era of Vertigo, which is the area when I was coming back into comics through Sandman, which is a Vertigo book, even though that was the previous era of Vertigo. But so many of those books that came out in the early mid-aughts, or just kind of the aughts in general, were so much of that's the basis of the stuff that I read. And those books, in my mind, those are untouchable, legendary books. We're talking about Sweet Tooth, Day Tripper, The Unwritten, even some of the books that I hadn't read but I'm aware of, things like The Losers and Transmetropolitan and things like that. He was there for all of it. All of that went through him.
Well, and I think I guess this would have been his era. I'm pretty sure it was Vertigo. Was Air by G. Willow Wilson. It's confusing now because it's being republished on Burger Books, which is Dark Horse. But I'm pretty sure that was a Vertigo title.
It was, which is why it's now on Burger Books, because Karen Berger ran Vertigo. So it made sense for G. Willow and MK Parker to take that book with them over to Dark Horse now because she's there. So, but he is someone. I think you can see. Maybe not directly the influence of those stories in his own writing here, but I think you can tell that he's taken in so much, because I think this book in particular is so well done. One thing that he talked about, and you'll hear next week, is about trying to not leave loose ends. You remember that? And how not
accidental loose ends.
Yeah.
We won't give away his method.
But
it's exactly what I would do if I was writing.
That's true. But the idea that he is thinking about the story in that way too, because I think him as an editor would look at it and be like, okay, but what about these things over here?
Yeah, you got to lay the beats and lay the pipe to connect.
Are they important or are they not? If they're not important, okay, but we need to maybe de-emphasize or whatever it is. So I think he looks at it from that way. Maybe he can't shut that part of his brain off. So he's approaching this as a writer, as an editor, and probably just as a fan, as a reader as well. He's taking all of these aspects into his own writing. And I think it shows, and I definitely think it helps with when you're talking about a mystery book like this, when you're working out what these reveals are, when they're going to come, and not just, it's one thing in a movie or in a book where you're like, well, okay, on page, 85 of 120, we're going to do this or something, or at the 90-minute mark of 120-minute movie, something like that. Here you're not just thinking about when the story, but also like what page are you on? Are you on the left-hand page or the right-hand page? Is it coming after a page flip? Is it going to be a page flip into a single page splash, a double page splash? There's all these other aspects of how the story is timed that are unique to the comics medium. And I think by having as much experience as he has, seeing stories from all different creators, all different genres, pulling the best of that and making it work for his story here. Because I think the reveals and the way things are paced out, you don't feel bored after the reveal of the killer, which is like the big way that we end after that first issue, that first arc. The story is still moving forward. He's still learning more and more about the case. The net is getting wider, in terms of who's involved and what their involvement is. It just keeps stepping up, and you're taken in by it all because there's never a moment where I think he's getting bogged down in his own story. There's never a moment where he is getting tangled up in his own kind of line that he's laying back.
Yeah.
The web that he's weaving in the story, he knows it well enough. He's agile enough to work around it where he's not himself is not getting bogged down in the storytelling. So thus us, the reader, don't get bogged down in the storytelling. We're just along for the ride. And I think it comes out very smooth.
I think it's exceptionally smooth on a reread.
Yes.
And I think some of the more poorly constructed stories, you have to struggle through the first time through, and you struggle on subsequent readings too.
Yeah.
Because it's like your brain is trying to make things fit when they didn't really mesh, didn't really hang together that well. Whereas this one hangs together so well. The reread took me half as much time as the initial read. Yeah. Which is not always the case. And an iconic ending. You get everything you love about the story, or everything I love about the story on page 149 and 150. Mm-hmm. You get the racist slur. They're baiting him into a fight. And it says, in 1943, looking to China as an ally against war in Japan, lifted the Chinese Exclusion Act.
Yeah.
You get another, trash talk comment. Don't bother. Ain't a cop in sight. The number of Chinese allowed to enter the country finally expanded. And he says, nope. And then it says to more than 105, no more than 105 immigrants a year. Yeah. And then you flip the page and he says, not a one. Yeah. And he's saying, not a one cop in sight, which is great, which I assume he's either being tongue in cheek or he's saying, no, I've relinquished my badge. Not a cop in sight. He will be a private detective from here on out.
Well, I think so. Yeah, he can't be Edison Hark. As he, a couple pages earlier, he does make a point of being like, listen, everybody still thinks Edison Hark is still a wanted man. Right. No matter what no matter what they've uncovered the truth. They know what happened, but that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things.
I did think he gave all that evidence to an intermediary to get to the police so that they could piece it together themselves.
Yes.
That doesn't mean they'll acquit, an Asian American man that they don't like anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So he does give the file folder. He gives that to Lucy with the idea that, listen, you're connected here. You'll get to the right people. So the truth will be out there, but that's not going to help me. I think that's kind of where he lands. He's kind of resigned to his fate. And I think maybe it's softened, or he takes solace in the fact that, hey, I'm a wanted man, but no one knows what I look like now, so I might as well take advantage of it. And I think that's what the ending is right there. And I do love how this ends, not just from there. I love that, but going back a few pages when they're in the restaurant and you get the history of chop suey, Yes. And from there, we get the kind of the full explanation all the way to the end, till those last couple pages where we once again get that bit of history intermixed with our story here. And so the book goes out the way that it comes in, which is, we're going to give you a download. We're going to let you know something maybe you didn't know before, but it's still wrapped up in this story. It's not just a text page. It isn't just like it's a history lesson in the back of the book, which is bonus material. We're still in the story. We're learning things about the characters. Because that last 2 pages there of Edison speaks volumes about who he is now. That he's got these 3 racist punks coming up at him. And what's he going to do? He's going to fight him.
Right. He's not necessarily the bigger man.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I love. It's like, you couldn't be the hard-boiled detective if you were the real grown-up who always walks away from everything. I know.
Well, the thing we mentioned, that, like we should say, when he's delivering his lines, he's got a smile on his face. He's got a smirk.
Oh,
It's almost like part of him maybe wanted someone to walk up on him in that moment, and these guys volunteered, because that last page when he throws that right hook
with the numbers. Yeah. No, yeah. It made me think of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek, where you have a drunk Kirk at the beginning of the movie. Oh, and there's 3. He's there like, can't you count? There's 3 of us and 1 of you. And he's like, we'll go get some friends and it'll be a fair fight.
Fair fight. Yeah. But no, I think there's that mix of the extra textual history. Here's what's going on. Here's what happened next. But in flux, still interwoven with a character moment, a pivotal character moment of where we leave Edison. What is his mindset at the end of this story after going through all that he did in this case? He's got a smile on his face as he punches a racist dude. You know, that's where he is.
Yeah. Which is really cathartic for the whole audience.
It is. Yeah.
At that point. It'd be even better if it was a racist cop. But, you know, you can't draw that kind of heat right at the end of the book.
Yeah.
So it's like, just punch a random racist. Yeah.
O'Malley walking up and trying to stop a random Chinese guy on the street. Yeah, that might have been a bridge too far. Might have been.
Yeah, I mean, I would have applauded it, but who's to say? I may have said it was a bridge too far, but I would have enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, that's all I have for this one. I think I maybe skipped a couple issues or skipped over them pretty quickly. Anything else you wanted to touch on for this series?
I don't think so. I mean, it is a lot of story beat. You know, we're not here to recap every reveal. But I think overall, I you can judge a mystery novel, I think, two ways, or look at it two ways of was the end result good, and was the process to get the end result good? And those things don't always have to match up. And I think we've talked about other books you've read, like you said, Sherlock Holmes, Poirot, things like that, where, you know, sometimes the reveal is maybe overly complicated. That was kind of the style of the times, though, right? They were maybe overly clever, overly intricate. But sometimes the delivery to get there can be done with such a flourish that maybe you overlook that. You know, the parlor reveal is done so well that you can overlook some of the wonkiness of how you get there. I think a story like this, the way that Alex and Pornsak presented it, into the scripting and the pacing and all that, I think it really works. I think it's very satisfying, and I like the idea, because it's very fitting for the book. Because we only just glazed over a little bit ago the idea that it ends, but not definitively. You know, it doesn't end. It doesn't end with true justice. It ends with the truth. It ends with the reader knowing the truth and the characters knowing the truth. But it doesn't end in anything we would think of justice. You know,
no, which is a neat parallel with that fact that the immigration policy was updated. To no more than 105. It's like, but that's not progress.
It's true to the book, though, of like, this is still the world they live in. This didn't change anything, essentially. You know, it didn't cause a shift in anything other than these lives here. But, you know, now Edison is at a place, I think a lot of the characters are in a place now where they have a better understanding, because of having gone through it. But yeah, it's not monumental, earth-shattering change. The status quo is still a status quo in San Francisco in 1936. You know, but our catharsis is knowing the truth. It's not our characters being in any sort of better place or anything like that. You know, we just get answers, and unfortunately for them, that's all they can get. That's all they can be hopeful to get. And that's what they're left with.
Yeah. Just an incredible setup for a character that I'm determined to see again.
Absolutely.
In whatever the way that comes to us.
Yeah.
Super exciting. But anyway, if you missed our interview with Alex Tefenkgi, that is on the app you're listening to right now, whatever the app that is. You can also It's a few weeks back, or you can go to storiedarcs.com. We now have a menu item at the top. This is exciting to me because I do the website. We have a creator interviews section, and
we have enough now to warrant that.
Well, and now it's getting crowded on one page. They're each going to get their own page.
There we go.
And I hope it just keeps pouring in, because that was kind of the dream for us. Like, I don't think we ever had ambitions of making money or becoming famous. We were like, wouldn't it be awesome if we could have like a book club style discussion and talk to some of the creators?
Yeah, we could pick their brain a little bit. Yeah.
Right. So shout out to Hillary Jenkins, who joined us crazy early on.
Very, very early on.
Second series we were doing.
Yeah.
Just could not have been cooler about it. Gave a great interview and has continued incredible work. In fact, I'm looking at my latest comic art acquisition, and is a cat biting an arm from Hairball.
Hairball, yes.
So maybe that's a one shot we do at Halloween this year. With
something
Hairball.
like that could be
super fun.
Yeah.
And then Alex was great to interview, and Pornsak, cannot wait for you to hear that interview.
Yeah.
Anyway, after Pornsak, we will have a new season ready to roll for you in August or whenever you're listening to this. Hopefully, evergreen content. And thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter or whatever that website's called.
Whatever social media thing it is,
we're also
there.
Technically on Threads. We're going to try to get on whatever the great descendant of the website formerly known as Twitter is.
Storedarks.com.
Storedarks.com is safe. Yeah. Instagram is pretty safe for the foreseeable future. So anyway, storedarks.com. Find us there. Tune in next week. Thanks for listening.
Peace.